Good afternoon. How are you? Oh, it's just gorgeous out. Jefferson says it's 62 degrees. It's just a little brisk. That's nice. And humidity's 41, and the wind is about 5.9 miles an hour, so you can feel it a little bit today. I saw a couple out walking their dogs on this trail. The owners and dogs alike were delighted. It's that kind of a day, and the trees are changing colors. It's the kind of thing you can celebrate even in the face of the dystopic environment that surrounds us in our daily life when we're not on a dirt road like this. And so we have to celebrate the best things we have to share. It's interesting how, if you pay attention and remember facts and compare them, you get a feeling for how America and the world is out of kilter, and we contribute to this ourselves. But just a couple of ordinary things to observe. Remember the conversations about eggs, and we're going to make them less expensive and everything. Well, apparently 6 million eggs have been recalled. I don't remember the different companies and so forth. Salmonella. And I suppose if you can't eat them, I do wonder if you could still use them to throw at somebody, although I don't know who that would be. Let's choose Secretary Hold My Beer Hegseth for a moment. This is a guy who is so afraid of everything, violates all the rules, would have us believe he's a real soldier when his excesses persuade us on a daily basis that he's got no business being in that position. And it's a very important position because it's a coordinate cabinet officer who should be working hand in glove with the State Department so that there's no necessity, there's no fear of America going off half-cocked and, I don't know, shooting fishermen off the Venezuelan coast, or dropping a super bomb in Iran, or suggesting that Hamas maybe should be killed if they don't do exactly what he wants. And Ukraine, well, I'm not going to give you Tomahawk missiles because, Jesus, if I do that, you might actually beat back Putin, and I'm his puppet, and he's my puppeteer. We can't have that happen. So what is Secretary Hold My Beer Hegseth up to? Well, he had this view that they had to get prior approval for anything that was said by the department if the journalists were going to report it. And they said, we're not agreeing to that. And they walked out. And so now he's trying to do the same thing. And our experience with standing armies is as bad as our experience with closed doors when it involves the military. Some of us lived through or have read or observed the stories of the Pentagon Papers, how the people were lied to and asked to sacrifice blood and treasure for a war we were being misled. Heroes came back from that war, like Kerry, who threw his awards away, saying that we had to know what was going on there to make an intelligent judgment. And it was a bipartisan thing done to Americans, done to people. My original draft board was such that they told me that people were coming back in body bags because the neighborhood where I came from, kids didn't have certain opportunities, and they were considered cannon fodder, basically. And so now we have a guy who's the Secretary of Defense who calls himself the Secretary of War, telling us something about his attitude about the arrangement between defense and state, and he wants to keep him shut. Well, watch out, because you're inviting disclosures because apparently you're doing things you don't want anybody to know about. And that's the first step in the direction of opening up the doors, insisting on the transparency that they always say they have, but they never deliver on. And then it's interesting to see how Trump turns on his own. Like, for example, Rand Paul. Rand Paul and I probably haven't agreed on much over the years, but he did agree, and I did agree with him, about the big bad bill that is compromising Americans. And then the fact that the government's shut down and we're not doing anything about that. And so Trump, being a man who seeks no conference with those necessary to a full and fair decision, noted that Rand Paul was not at a press conference today, a luncheon press conference today. Well, Rand Paul is no slouch in this arena, and he said that he was basically having lunch with Massey, who's also from Kentucky. And this is what we need in more frequency, more visibility, to encourage Americans of the view that when we see 7 million people demonstrate, 2,600 different locations in America, 17 or so foreign nation states agreeing with us, that something's going on, not just in our neighborhoods, but in the world, when everybody gets it. And what is Trump's answer? Literally to throw shit at people who are protesting within the bounds of the First Amendment without violence or offense to anyone else. Tearing down a portion of the White House. What is wrong with him? And in plain view, North Carolina's redrawing districts so that they can, quote, win an election that is really basically fixed, because you're identifying voters, putting them all together in sections of the state, and then you figure you can win them, and you'll lie and do everything else that's possible. That's not representative government. That's what dictators do. Trump is a full-blown dictator. People say, well, he's tending. No, he's not tending toward. He is. The man wants us to pay him $250 million for the wrongs that he did, stealing documents classified from the White House, keeping them at Mar-a-Lago, and then misleading investigators that he'd done it. He think we should pay him because those charges were dismissed, which is one of my beefs with Smith, by the way. Not that he's corrupt in any way, but that he was wrong. He should have been fighting continuously. He had the authority to do it. Force them to take it away from you. I think of Watergate and what happened there. And the lawyers at that time fought back every inch of the way, every opportunity they had, made arrangements to keep intact, maintain the integrity of the information they had. So this is what we have to keep in mind. And it's manifest on a daily basis. For example, those of you familiar with New York, there's a canal street in lower Manhattan where there was originally a canal. And the location is where there are cellars. And so what has happened? Masked ICE officials, gangs, in my opinion, running through the streets, asking people, show me your ID. They don't have any right to do that. There's no probable cause. Whether they're looking at a person and saying, well, he looks Hispanic or Chinese or, I don't know, maybe even Irish. Did he have a brogue? That would be a giveaway. And what the hell judge in the world says that's okay? That's probable cause, basically to profile people. And based on what you think is an entire racial characteristic, what? If there's anything you could say, no, I don't think I could even say that. We have hardworking people without regard to what they look like, what they believe in, where they're from. We're trying to make this the greatest nation on the earth. And these other guys, these criminals running around in mass, are trying to compromise what the good men and women and children in America are fighting to preserve and protect. So, where we have these guys in Canal Street, Manhattan, demanding papers, including from youngsters, it's just wrong. What's our reaction to stuff like this? Well, there's a very good reaction in the sense of us finding common cause and having a demonstration unprecedented as we had on Saturday. But there's an interesting story today I read, and it's interesting how it evolved. It is screaming in public places. Those who have an intention of anger, let it out screaming. Now, one person said he'd like to do that at the White House. Now, you may not have remembered the passages in 1984 by George Orwell. And he talks about this. You may remember, or not, there was daily 2-minute hate periods. There would be the image of someone, and they would scream for 2 minutes at this person. There was a preparation, there was the screaming, and there were things afterwards. And this was built in to that society, forced by Big Brother. But Orwell wrote that the horrible thing was not that one was obligated to do this, but that one couldn't avoid joining in, meaning that chose not to avoid joining in, needed to shout and scream. And if you remember, that was Emmanuel Goldstein who was, pictured, and they would shout and scream at him as an enemy of Big Brother. And so, how is that like Donald Trump today? And the screaming that's being made in public places, but kind of unaware of the connection to the fictional tale of a dystopic America, or Great Britain, I guess, where things like this could exist. And so people let it out by having 2 minutes of screaming and so forth. There's an old movie that captures this, and it's worth watching. It's powerful stuff. It's well done. But we're living it. We're living it because we're looking for avenues of release. And instead of wanting to shout and scream, my advice is to retreat to music or a leaf-strewn trail, or hitting the heavy bag, as I do from time to time. And then doing something constructive, something that can make a difference, something that advances the need we have to make unnecessary our anger by the fact of Saturday, what happened in America and around the world. And what we must do now to press upon our elected officials, our quote representatives, to represent us, to adhere to the oaths they took when they became a senator or a congressman. And the judges as well. These judges can distinguish between a foul ideology that would destroy the America that we've known and replace it with a monarchy that's not even remotely resembling a beneficent dictator. And so this is the challenge that we face. We have to kick in the ass all these people who are not serving their oath, the people they supposedly represent. And the truth be told, they should be thrown out of office. Because, we have an organized crime figure in the White House, and we're acting as if he really is a president worthy of us deferring to his judgment, because he's shown no judgment. What he has shown is himself an anger against us, against any one of us who would disagree with him, even long associates like Rand Paul and others. But Trump is a force of evil, and we don't act as if he is. And I guess corporate communications aren't prepared to embrace the truth, and as a result, we're all compromised. So those are a couple of thoughts I have today. And so I say good evening to you from our cathedral of trees until tomorrow. Bye-bye.